Well, just squeeze your finger a little bit more.
You might squirt.
I think I pushed it too.
Yeah, you might need to do it a bit deeper.
Pull that back bit till it clicks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people with different skin types need a different needle.
I think it's advised you do round the finger rather than the pad.
Right there. That's it, there you go. It's got to have enough blood on those ones. They're a little bit different to other ones I've had. Is there butterflies on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll come up.
6.7.
Ah, so everyone's is pretty good. But if like, say for example, you had a bit of cake, it might go up to about 8.
Yes.
Depending.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to do it?
I pulled it back.
Oh, you just pulled it back.
But I think you're advised to do it round the edge rather than the pad of your finger, aren't you?
Yeah, because the skin round the edges it's like softer
Yes.
skin, whereas obviously typing and picking things up, it's a bit different. Cool. Do you feel that?
Yeah, you think you clicked it before you...
He did, he gets nervous. It's one of those things though, because you know what pinch is.
Yeah. You're just waiting for it, aren't you?
Yeah. Is that done?
6.8.
Oh, that's good. So that is basically everyone is right on the nail there. Everyone's got exactly as it should be.
Yeah.
What
would we do if it was reading 11 or 12?
So that could be a false high. So it could be maybe if you've had a really sugary drink or you've been lazing around all day and eating. It'd be something to keep an eye on though, because if it was like that sort of regularly, it might be worth going to speak to your doctor. But it could just be that you've had a bit of fast acting and maybe you haven't exercised enough, but you could go and do a workout or drink water or I don't know really. Just leave it a little bit longer and it might drop down.
Again.
Try again later.
Because it's the sort of thing you should do as a regular thing when you're older.
Check your blood sugar.
Not often, but
yeah, just to make sure.
Just to make sure, because it's silent. You don't know if it's reading high. If it's like 10 all the time, you perhaps wouldn't feel it.
Well, no, you wouldn't. Not if you're not diabetic. If you know what I mean, you wouldn't know the difference.
Type 2, verging on type 2.
Yeah, you might just think it's. I don't know. You might feel a bit tired because you'd notice if your blood sugars were high, you would probably feel quite sleepy and lethargic. Whereas, so you've had an incident, haven't you, where your blood sugars were low?
Yes.
And what was it you'd been doing? And you're not diabetic either.
No, I was playing football, had an accident, dislocated my knee. I was sat in shock for an hour and a half before the ambulance came, and I was shaking and stuff, and so they checked my blood sugar levels, and I was like 2.3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they give me glucose gel.
Yeah.
2 bottles of that, two little tubes of that.
But you've had it recently, haven't you? Have you had it recently when you'd been doing something?
Yes.
And what had you been doing that day? Had you eaten? Had you been?
I just genuinely don't think I had that for a long period of time.
Yeah. So it can affect people whether you're diabetic or not, but it's knowing the signs and symptoms and knowing how to check it to be able to understand what it is you have to have and what it is you have to eat. Or
could it be your equipment as well?
It can be, yeah. So what happens is when you have the equipment, you get 2 tester bottles with it. So they say maybe every 2-3 months, if not more, to take some test strips and test and make sure that the liquid in the bottle gives you the glucose reading
Yeah,
that it states on the side of the bottle. If it doesn't, your machine's not working
yeah,
and you have to get a new one. They do say to update your equipment maybe every 6 months or so, depending on how often you use it and
yeah,
things like that. But it depends. I would say I probably change mine yearly
yeah.
because that's when I see my diabetic consultant. But I do my checks and make sure it's because with this, the one on my arm, it's slightly different. So if I feel like my bloods are dipping, but my scan on my arm says they're fine, I'll use that, and that could give me a different reading because it's testing a different glucose in the body.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's why that's probably the best way to determine,
True reading.
like a true reading.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's not something that can be put in a first aid kit. It's not something that you'd necessarily be checked unless you had underlying, like, regular symptoms of being thirsty or
urinating a lot.
or being tired, or so it just depends. But I do think that, would you say it's easy to do?
Yes, really.
Would you say the machine's easy to use?
Yeah.
So like with what I've given you there, it basically just gives you the standard steps of how to use it. There's no more to it and there's no less. So really, everyone should be trained to understand how to read a blood sugar level and how to use a machine personally.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions at all? We've basically covered the majority of what it is.
But do you have to change your diet?
Type 2 you might do.
No, type 2 you would have to.
Yeah, type 1, so if obviously it's difficult, it's more about insulin control than diet as such, because if you're eating a lot of sugary things, which you shouldn't do, you'd have to adjust your insulin, whereas if you were having a lot of lows, you'd still have to adjust it, but you'd have to make sure you were carb counting and things like that to just make sure that your levels are stable enough to be safe.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, it all depends. But then that's another thing. If you ever had anyone like that, they should make you fully aware of their control.
Yes. Yeah.
And if they needed anything, where it would be.
Yeah.
So in my office, I've got a box of stuff in my drawer that my manager knows about, my colleagues know about, or they know it's in. If there's nothing in that box, I've got things in the bag. So it's always worth, especially like as managers and team leaders, to know those bits and pieces and what to do. But obviously, because you're being trained on it, you'll know how to check
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Good to do it now. Yeah.
Any other questions at all?
So obviously you got the test strips. You obviously have to get them from the doctors every
Yes. Whenever you
month or 2 months.
roughly monthly. So it's whenever you need them. They would be on a repeat prescription.
But you'd have to buy your own if, like myself, who's not diabetic, but thought it was a good idea to check my blood sugars every 6 months to make sure I'm not.
Yes, you would have to buy
Yeah.
your own. You'd have
After
to.
my mum's history.
Yeah.
Be-
Yeah, you'd have to buy your own. But you can get them from pharmacies, Boots. A lot of people do buy their own. Type 2 diabetics have, not all of them,
Yeah.
but if it's not on their prescription, they have to buy their own,
Yeah.
like machines and strips.
Yeah.
But then they probably wouldn't have to check their blood sugars as regularly as a type 1.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. I think it's a good idea. I think also like every 6 months check your blood, get a little blood pressure machine.
Yeah.
Do your blood sugar.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. I think at my age to keep an eye on it.
yeah, it's a good way to just keep an eye on things as well.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot behind, obviously, knowing your blood sugar level and knowing how to control it.
Yeah.
And
But
things
if you're hit with diabetes, like in your 20s, for instance, and you've went all that life without having to have any control, and then all of a sudden you need that control, I can understand it being a very hard sort of routine to get into,
Yeah.
constantly checking yourself.
Oh god, yeah, definitely. But that's why it needs to be more common for people to understand
Yeah.
and know what they're doing with it. So for a newbie, if you pulled this out and people weren't aware of blood checking, you might get funny looks, you might have comments made, but it is, everyone should be aware of how to do it.
I think it's so incredibly important as well that people understand what to do when
Mhm.
somebody has the signs of a hypo
Yeah,
compared with a hyper,
yeah,
because people could try to give insulin to somebody having a hypo,
yeah,
and that's actually been on television.
yeah,
Yeah.
because they don't understand
They don't
how
understand the
diabetes
difference.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it then. We'll wrap up now.
Great.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you very much.
listening.
Thank you very much
Thank
for that
you.
lesson.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.